Welcome back once again to another Aramaic Bible study. You'll forgive me, my voice is a little hoarse. I have lost it somewhere, and hopefully I will get it back soon. These studies are intended for students of the Aramaic language and students of Scripture. You can be in one or both of the categories, or just interested in following along. Today, we'll be looking at Matthew chapter 2, verses 13 through 18 from the Syriac Pshito. And this effectively covers the massacre of the innocents. So let's begin, as always. The Western accent is going to be in white above, and the Eastern Syriac accent is going to be in sky blue below. And first with the Western accent. كادن إزال إحزي ملاخذ مريو بحلمه ليوسف ومرلي قم دفر لطاليو ولمي وعروق المصرين والثامن حوي قدامو دو مرنو لوخ عتيد وغير هيرودس لمبعي لطاليو ايخ لنبدي. And now in the Eastern accent. كادن إزال حتزي ملاخذ مريا بحلمه ليوسف ومرلي قوم دفر لطاليا ولأمي بعروق المصرين وطامن وعدامة دي مرنا لخ عتيد وغير هيرودس لمبعي لتاليا اختنبدي. And when they were gone, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said to him, Arise, lead the child and his mother and flee into Egypt and be there until I tell you, for Herod will seek out the child that he may destroy him. Word to look at here that I found interesting is this verb atid, and here I'm translating it as intends. The word is actually related to the concept of the future in Aramaic. And so, it can also refer to a preface of a book, or todo, and things like this. So it's this idea of what hasn't transpired that is sort of on the table, right? Like is on the table in the sense of what could come next. What do we intend? What is before us? It hasn't happened yet, right? And so that's the idea of intending or the future related to this term. We don't really have that so much in English. To futurize, we don't make future a verb, or the intention when we say in English. We don't use it to refer to the future. We use that word to think of a mental state. But here in Aramaic, these are tied together. Pretty cool concept. Verse 14, first in the Western accent. يوسف تنقوم شقل لطاليو ولعمي بالليليو وأرق لمصرين. Now in the Eastern accent. يوسف تنقوم شقل لطاليو ولعمي بالليليو وأرق لمصرين. Then Joseph arose, took the child and his mother by night, and fled to Egypt. Pretty straightforward. Verse 15, first in the Western accent. وحول تعمون عدامو لموت هيرودس دنثما لمدم دثمار من مريو بنبيو دومار دمن مسرين قريث البر. Now in the Eastern accent. وحول تعمون عداما لموت هيرودس دنثما لمدم دثمار من مريا بنويا دامار دمن مسرين قريث البر. And he was there until the death of Herod, that so might be fulfilled that which was spoken of the Lord by the prophet, saying, From Egypt I have called my son. So this looks like it's a reference to Hosea, where we find that phrase, out of Egypt I have called my son. Verse 16, first in the Western accent. Hoiden Herodes kadhzo deth bazah min mgushe eth hamath tov وشادر قتلت لويه كلهون بثلحم وذ كلهون تحومي من برترتين شنين وتحت عيك زونو تأقف من منقوشي. And now in the Eastern accent. هويدين هيرودس قاد حزا تأث بزخ من منقوشي اتقامات طاب وشادر قتال طلاية كلهن بثلخيم وذ كلهن تخومي من برترتين شنين والتحت ايخ زونا تأقو من منقوشي. Then Herod, when he saw that he had been deluded by the Magi, was very angry And he sent and slew all the children in Bethlehem and in all its outskirts, from a child of 2 years and under, according to the time that he had begun his search from the Magi. A couple words to look at in this verse. The first one is this ethbazah. He had been deluded. I mean, this is a word that's like you use for when you're mocked or scorned or, derided, right? Where it's not just that you've been swindled, but that you've been made a fool of. Bazah, I don't know, what can we, bamboozled? What's a bamboozle might be a good word. Bazah, bamboozle, it's not quite close enough. But if you can think of a mnemonic for remembering that, go ahead and post it below. Let us know. Next word to look at is Eth Hamath. He was angry. He was angry. Eth Hamath. It's a pretty cool idea. I mean, this root goes back to the idea of being hot. Chimma is hot, right? So in the Semitic world, to get angry is to kind of heat up, right? Your face goes flush, your temperature rises. It's that, in the cartoons, the steam coming out of the ears. How do you describe in the ancient world what it's like to feel anger, right? And maybe it's like a fire. Maybe it's like this heat that's generated from inside you. And so, I'm not sure where the English etymology of anger comes from specifically, but even if it did go back to some idea of flames or heat, maybe Agni in, Proto-Semitic. I mean, you have Agni in like Indo-European languages for fire. It could be close to anger. I don't know. But even if that were the case, we don't really think of it. It's not kind of like in our face the way a word like this is. Verse 17, first in the Western accent. Hoiden ethmali medem Dethemar biyad eramio nwiyo demar. Now in the Eastern accent. Haiden etamli medem detemar biyad eramia nwiya demar. Then was that fulfilled which was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet, saying, and now verse 18, first in the Western accent. Qolo eshtamar barramtho, bechyo, welyo sagiyo, Rahel bochyo al bne ulo sobyo, lemeth bayo metu the lo ithayhun. And now in the Eastern accent. Kala eshtmale baramta, bechya, welya sagiye, Rachel bechya al bne ula soya, lemeth bayo metu the la ithayhun. And a voice was heard in Ramtho, weeping and great lamentation, Rachel bemoaning her children and unwilling to be comforted because they are no more. So a little interesting feature here in the Aramaic. I think in the Hebrew, it just says Ramah. And so that is not taken as a place name per se in the Aramaic, so much as it is a translation of Ramah, meaning to be high. So like a hill, hilltop. Hilltop's probably a good English translation. It's not quite a peak, but an elevation or elevated area. They use it for towns that are elevated and what have you. So there's a specific one north of Bethlehem, and the fathers comment about this, and in some of their commentaries, you'll see it's not to be thought of as a place per se, but as the type of cry, as a great, an extended, a high wail, right? Because it's a qolo, it's a voice, right? And so that voice is a certain type. It's a high voice. It's a weeping. It's great lamentation, right? Very high weeping. So anyway, it can be read multiple ways, I suppose. In fact, different, fathers they write down the different ways. And if you're familiar with rabbinic literature, you'll see this phrase, davar aher, this, and another thing, or another interpretation. And it's like that among the fathers from the Eastern Mediterranean as well. Now, this whole passage is one of those things where, people will, in the scholarly world, say, well, the massacre of the innocents didn't happen because it's in the Bible and nowhere else. And so not just that, but because Matthew sets up a number of prophecies, right? prophecy fulfillment. Prophecy fulfillment is sort of the pattern of how he begins his gospel account. And they'll say, oh, it's too convenient. That helps get them to Egypt if something bad happens. So then they can say, out of Egypt, I've called my son. And so you'll have this general view these days that, it's not a historical event. I'm a little more skeptical of that skepticism, just for the simple fact that, Herod was kind of a maniac. He killed his wife and his own sons. So it's not unlike him. Among the, look, if you study anything about Herod, you'll find this guy is very good at having people whacked. He's very good at having people killed, especially anyone who would provide a rival claim to the throne. So it's not out of character. Yes, it's only attested in Matthew, and it does line up some prophecies, but there was a famine in the Holy Land a couple decades before the birth of Jesus. So if that were the case, why not use that memory of a famine to push people into Egypt? I think typologically, that would have been a better fake story than this one. So I don't know. I mean, if a famine drives you into the land, well, that's not unlike the early, form of Exodus, right? Or even the end of Genesis, where you've got these problems and people are starving, and so they go to the place where the grain is. Why not go to Egypt? I mean, the Romans are doing it too later on. Everyone wants Egypt because Egypt is where the grain is. And so you have a number of conflicts there in the Roman period. So I don't know. I'm skeptical of the skepticism, but I do acknowledge the fact that it's only in Matthew. And so, yes, it's in Matthew. Yes, it is certainly of the character. What kind of number would that have been? The children killed? It doesn't look like it would have been a large number, and you have different numbers mentioned sort of throughout ecclesiastical history. Some are extraordinarily high, but those may be typological. So at least the way they're received and explained, in the Fathers. In any case, this is all we get from the Aramaic, and I hope this study has been a benefit to you. If you have found it a benefit, go ahead and feel free to share it with your study group. Use the insights in your preaching. If you're just here for the language, I hope you got some great insights on Syriac Aramaic. Feel free to like, share, subscribe, and all the wonderful algorithmic things we can do to promote videos like this, and especially elevate the Aramaic language to the place of its proper importance. No disrespect to any other language that we may use in Christian studies or biblical studies, Greek, Hebrew, things like that. Those are all fantastic as well. But we need to also give props to Aramaic, especially given the longevity of the language in and around the age in which Scripture grew. So thank you all for watching, and we will encounter you next time.